Alrighty, so midweek action tomorrow on Wednesday. We are going to once again have 13 games that's going to be happening in the middle of the week, and a lot of those games are going to be starting around the 7:30, 8 o'clock window. So yeah, there's going to be a lot for me to handle in terms of I'm going to try my best in terms of watching as much soccer as possible. But with that being said, let us begin by talking about the 7:30 start. And one thing I also want to mention is that we also have a couple of rivalry games in this midweek action, which I always find it weird. The fact that you have midweek action featuring rivalry game, because I feel like for a big rivalry game in the occasion, it should be happening in the weekend rather in the middle of the week, because that really kills the support when it comes to the way team support traveling to an away stadium to watch their team play against the biggest rival. I feel like, again, rivalry games should only be reserved in the weekend, and it kind of again just mess up the vibes, and also just the build up heading into some of these rivalry games. But with that being said, let us begin by talking about the first game, which is Toronto versus the Philadelphia Union. This is the first of 7 games that start at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Told you that there's a lot of 7:30 starts. But TFC have a 3-4-8 record, whereas the Union have a 9-3-3 record. And in terms of the head-to-head matchup, Toronto actually has the better of the head-to-head matchup, 14-8-11 in favor of TFC. But I think that's mainly because that was back when Toronto was a powerhouse, in the Union not so much of a powerhouse back then. It feels like recent trend have shown that the Union have been better against TFC, and you expect that this is going to be the case. I mean, I'm pretty sure the Union are still going to be very upset after dropping points against Inter Miami in that game that they clearly should have won that one. I mean, they were the better team against Inter Miami, and unfortunately, they fall into the typical Inter Miami trap of not taking advantage of chances and end up drawing that game. Almost like they lost that game. It definitely felt like a loss if you're a Union fan in terms of that free resort, and we'll see whether or not they can redeem themselves against the TFC side. That on one hand, yes, they do have a lot of home games coming up, but on the other hand, they're facing against some of the toughest teams at home. So yeah, not ideal for a team that is looking maybe trying to get back into the playoff race. And I say maybe because yeah, this team probably not going to make the playoffs. Now, moving on in the next one, we got the Red Bulls versus Charlotte FC. So both of these teams coming off of much needed win. For the Red Bulls, they're now 6-3-6, whereas for Charlotte, they finally stopped the bleeding in the last game, finally winning their first game after a 5-game losing streak and have a 7-1-7 record. Now, in terms of head-to-head meeting, 4-3-1 in favor of in favor of the New York Red Bulls. So yeah, the Red Bulls have had Charlotte's number recently. So let's see whether or not if they can use that against a Charlotte team. That again, that win against Columbus, that was a much needed win for them, because this team was going on a really bad losing run, and now it's going to be interesting to play against a Red Bull side that, for the most part, they're pretty good this season at home, and we'll see whether that can continue in this game against the Charlotte team. Now, moving on, we got NYCFC versus the Houston Dynamo. So we have a couple of interconference matchup. I think this is one of only 2 games that is an interconference matchup. But for NYCFC, 7-3-5, whereas the Dynamo is 4-5-6. In terms of the head-to-head meeting, it's actually 2 wins, 2 draw, and 2 losses. For all of these teams. Now, the Dynamo has definitely played much better recently under Ben Olsen, and they'll definitely be frustrated the fact that they had a chance to get their 5th win of the season against the Quakes. Had a 2-0 lead in that one. But at the same time, I think Ben also will be happy the fact that after them kind of go through a meltdown in the second half against the Quakes, they still were able to get a free result against an NYCFC side that, yeah, we know that when it comes to home form, they need to capitalize on these chances to keep themselves above the playoff contention. Now, there's one good thing I will say about NYCFC is that they do have a bit of an easy schedule coming up. I mean, when you look at the opposition that they're going to be facing in these next couple of games, most of them are below the red line. So we'll see whether or not they can take advantage of the easy schedule to get themselves higher in the standings. I mean, what's kind of interesting is that, while they still suck this season on the road, and yes, they have kind of at times dropped their fair amount of points at home this season, they're doing well when it comes to facing against the best of the best, especially playing at home, and now facing against a Dynamo team that this is a complete different Dynamo team that we've seen a couple of weeks ago. A couple of weeks ago, you would say NYCFC should easily win this one, but NYCFC got to be careful, because this is a Dynamo team that all of a sudden started to get some confidence under Ben Olsen, and only the fact that they're staying afloat right now in terms of the playoff race, while the reinforcement in the summer is going to come. But now it feels like they're starting to figure it out after just a brutal start to the season for this Dynamo side. Now, moving on, we got Inter Miami versus Montreal. So for Inter Miami, yeah, the bad run of form kind of continue, but the last game feel like we saw a little bit of the old Inter Miami. We saw a team that looked like they were dead and buried when they were down 3-1, and looked like this is just another game add to the list of misery that Javier Mascherano's side has gone. But they came back and got a free draw in that one, especially some of the big names of this team is started to contribute once again. Now coming into this game, they're playing against a lowly Montreal side, have a 1-5-9 record, but they did play well against LAFC. Montreal definitely put up a fight against one of the best team in the league, and they're gonna have to do that again in this one against Miami. Now, what's kind of interesting is that Montreal has kind of had Miami number at times. Remember, this was a team that actually beat Inter Miami last season at Chase Stadium, and their head-to-head record is 6-1-3 in favor of Miami. Montreal has been one of those bogey teams that Miami has had, but at the same time, you got to say that they cannot afford to lose this game against Montreal. Like when you are playing against literally the worst team in the Eastern Conference and literally one of the worst team in the league, the second worst team in the league besides the LA Galaxy, who's still winless. Yeah, there's no excuse to not win this game if you're in Inter Miami and continue to further the crisis that this team has been going through. Now, moving on, we got DC versus the New England Revolution. So DC 3-5-7, whereas New England have a 5-4-4 record. They play in a thrilling free draw over the weekend in the game that I mean, there's mixed feeling if you're Caleb Porter. Yes, on one hand, you're happy the fact that you still able to show some fight after having a similar meltdown that the Houston Dynamo had in the second half, blowing a 2-0 lead and found yourself 3-2 down in quick succession. But at the same time, you'll be very frustrated the fact that yeah, you blow a 2-0 lead, and especially they had the chances to win that game late as well against Sporting KC. But nevertheless, they have a chance to do so against a DC side that they've been pretty inconsistent lately, and it's more toward the bat category. And not to mention, they still suck at home this season. This is a team that has had problem at Audi Field going back to last year, and it kind of continue after that Atlantic Cup loss. But in terms of the head-to-head meeting, 17-7 and 13 in favor of the New England Revolution. And again, this is one of the more doable away game that the Revs can have, and we'll see whether or not they can get another win to continue this incredible revival that Caleb Porter's side has been going through for these last month or two. Now, moving on, we got Cincinnati versus FC Dallas. So for Cincinnati, yeah, let's not talk about what happened on Sunday. That was a pretty poor performance, probably the worst performance that Pat Nolan's side has put, especially on the defensive department. But they have a 9-2-4 record facing against a Dallas side that is 4-4-6. Now, in terms of the hand-to-hand meeting, there's only been two other meetings between both of these teams. Both of these teams getting one wins apiece in these prior two other meeting, and there's no doubt that Cincinnati would love to have a bounce back in this game. Again, that last game against Atlanta, it was not a pretty performance whatsoever, and as I said, probably one of the worst performance Matt Nolan's has had in recent memory, and against a Dallas team that this is a Dallas team that for whatever reason they tends to play much better on the road, especially on the attacking end. It seems like the attack seems to always click when they're on the road compared to when they're playing at home. So do not be surprised. For Cincinnati, they can't take this Dallas team lightly, even though Dallas has had their issue in the last couple of games, and that they're another team that I've already mentioned many times, very hard to predict because you don't know what kind of Dallas team, what kind of Peter Quill Dallas team is going to show. But I think when you look at recent pattern, usually we might see a Peter Quill Dallas team that perform very well on the road and show some attacking power compared to when they're at home, where the goals have been hard to come by when they're playing at home. Now, moving on, we got Atlanta versus Orlando City. So this is one of those rivalry games that I talked about, and it's been a while since I remember an Atlanta Orlando game taking place in the middle of the week. This game has to be on the weekend with how marquee Atlanta and Orlando game has always been. It's got to be a game that I feel like should have played on the weekend. But nevertheless, for Atlanta United, boy, did they need that victory against Cincinnati, and we'll see whether or not if that victory might be a turnaround for them, because we said that about them when they faced against NYCFC in that incredible comeback, and then they went on an 8-game win winless run. So we'll see whether that was a mirage, and what a way to test to see whether or not that's a mirage against one of the better team in the Eastern Conference in Orlando City. Now, one thing I will say about Orlando this season, they have had their struggle this season on the road. They haven't been as good on the road, especially on the attacking end. The attack has kind of been faltering on the road compared to them playing at home. It's almost like they're kind of having the opposite problem that Dallas had, where Dallas tends to do much better on the attack on the road compared to them at home. Well, for Orlando, they're much better in terms of the attack when they're playing at home compared to them playing on the road. But nevertheless, in terms of the head-to-head meeting, Atlanta still can say that Orlando is kind of their fodder. Although lately, the when you look at the head-to-head meeting between both of these teams, it's been relatively even. Orlando, of course, run Atlanta out of the door, and the last time both of these teams faced off against each other was a 3-0 Orlando win. But yeah, the head-to-head meeting still in favor of Atlanta, 11-7-6, and there's no doubt that I think Atlanta still will remember that 3-0 defeat that they have, and especially like I said before, Orlando, that was kind of a game that they desperately wanted, because after all the ownage that Atlanta seems to have on them, it was about time that they finally have a chance to kind of do an ass kicking against a struggling Atlanta side. But again, we'll see whether or not they can do so, especially you would expect after that big win that they have against FC Cincinnati, you would expect this team should be fire up and maybe a huge sigh of relief as well. I mean, Ronnie Delia, we talk about him sitting in a really hot seat right now. That 4-2 win against Cincinnati might cool off his seat a little bit, but in order to completely cool it off, or at least cool it off just a bit, they need to keep winning games. I mean, they cannot have these kind of one-off games where they look really good and you're thinking, oh, Atlanta is back, and then they follow up with a long winless run, and yeah, they are not back. Now, moving on, we got Columbus versus Nashville SC. So this game actually starts 30 minutes after the 7:30 start, and I guess maybe the league realized that, yeah, let's put 8 games at the same time at 7:30. Let's at least put one that is going to start a little later. So this game starts 30 minutes later, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and what a marquee matchup this would be. I mean, Columbus 7-6-2. They're currently fifth in the Eastern Conference, which is kind of surprising considered this team does not play like they're fifth in the standings. Although the East is a little bit of logjam, at least near the top of the standings. Teams kind of move around left and right, so don't be surprised if Columbus does get a win in this one. They can get themselves back up to the top three, and they're facing against a Nashville side that is definitely playing under a lot of confidence under BJ Callahan. They have become a team that in the beginning of the season was just so unpredictable, being inconsistent, to now being a team that has been consistent, and now it feels like whatever BJ Callahan system is it that he implemented on this Nashville side, the players are finally bought into it, and you can see the reward that it's been getting with them now having an 8-3-4 record, sitting third in the Eastern Conference. Now, in terms of the head-to-head meeting, 4-3-2 in favor of Nashville. And what's kind of interesting about this game is that both of these teams tends to like to have the ball. I mean, it will be interesting to see whether or not if BJ Callahan might kind of revert a little bit back to the Gary Smith system, or maybe not decide to defend and use on the transition woman, because you can counter against this Columbus team. Charlotte showed in the game against Columbus that you can definitely counter against this Columbus team, especially if you bypass their original line of confrontation. You're going to find some space because of the fact that we're not Nancy, and the whole Nancy ball system is all heavily rely on possession and heavily rely on the press to win the ball back constantly. So yeah, should be very interesting to see how the showdown is gonna look like. Could definitely be a preview in terms of the playoff matchup that we could see between both of these teams in the future as well. Now, looking at the 8:30 p.m. start, there's only two games that starts at 8:30, and one of those games is not even a Central time start. It's Seattle versus San Diego. Very strange to see Seattle get a really early start in this one. I mean, for a midweek game, the game starts at 5:30. I mean, that's kind of brutal, and I don't know how the attendance is gonna be for a 5:30 start in Seattle, but nevertheless, Seattle has a 6-5-4 record, whereas San Diego have an 8-3-4 record. The first time both of these teams meet each other, yeah, San Diego absolutely demolished the Sounders in that one. They won 3-0 in that one, and there's no doubt that the Sounders are looking for some revenge in this one. They've been okay so far, the Sounders. Yes, they are missing some key pieces on the attack, and I think once again they're clearly missing Jordan Morris, who is having trouble staying healthy this season. But nevertheless, should be a great chance for them to maybe get some bench in this one against the San Diego side that, as I said, that blip of form that they had in April when they lost like four in a row. Yeah, that looks like it was just a little outlier because they're now being back at their best and they're really gunning to try to become the best ever expansion team in MLS. I mean, when you look at the points total they have, I think they're on point of reaching that mark that LAFC did back in 2018 of getting 59 points in their expansion season. And then moving on into the other 8:30 start, we got Austin versus RSL. So Austin 5-4-6, whereas RSL is 4-2-9. And in terms of the head-to-head meeting, 4-2-3 in favor of RSL. Now, I don't expect there's going to be a lot of goal scoring in this one. I mean, if you're a neutral and you're looking for some entertaining soccer and some goal scoring, yeah, this is probably not the game you want to watch because both of these teams struggle in terms of scoring. Both of these teams have been pretty good, at least on the defensive part. So when you kind of have that kind of game, and especially with Austin game, it feels like most Austin games are usually low score, except for a couple of outlier game, the 5-1 beaten that they suffer against Vancouver is an example of that, and then the 3-0 loss against Minnesota at home is another outlier to that. But most Austin game has been very low scoring game. Not the funnest soccer you can imagine to watch. So I have a feeling that's going to be kind of the same case in this one. This could be a really low scoring game, and this could be a game that I would not be surprised if it ends 0-0. Hey, it feels like this game has 0-0 written all over, doesn't it? Now, moving on into the late West Coast start, we start off with the Cali Clasico between the Galaxy and the San Jose Earthquakes. Again, I just don't like when the Cali Clasico is happening in the middle of the week. I know this rivalry has kind of really lost its luster, just like what we saw with the Atlantic Cup, but still, it should not be in the middle of the week. But unfortunately, it is for this one, as the Galaxy, as we said many times this season, still looking for their first win of the season. Can you imagine if the Quakes is going to be that team to finally hand the Galaxy their first win the season? Like knowing the Quakes, I feel like that could happen. And now watch how I'll probably just that. And especially I'm wearing a Quakes jersey, this ugly away jersey that they have. I mean, I say ugly, but this jersey seems like it's kind of like a curse whenever the Quakes wear, especially last season with their 50th anniversary jersey. So yeah, I don't know if this was a great idea for me to try to curse the team by wearing this, but nevertheless, I had to wear something Quakes related whenever there's a Cali Clasico that's coming. But yeah, the Quakes is 5-4-6, whereas the Galaxy is 0-4-11 as this game starts at 10:15 p.m. Eastern, 7:15 Pacific. Now, in terms of the all-time meeting, 19-11-16 in favor of the LA Galaxy. And don't forget, the Galaxy has had the Quakes number in the recent Cali Clasico. So this kind of makes me even more worried, the fact that, yeah, I mean, with the way that the Quakes have had their problem against the Galaxy in recent memory, are they unfortunately going to be that team to finally end the winless run for the Galaxy? And when you look at the LA Galaxy, I really think that when you look at the painful losses that they suffer, most of these painful losses that they suffer, some of them are just kind of unfortunate. I mean, to give up zero shot in the entire game and still lose that one, it takes something special to do so. And then of course those heartbreaking losses, and also now having problem in terms of conceding goals late in the game and having problem closing out games as well. I mean, that kind of play into the contribute factor of just a season from hell for this Galaxy side. But again, they have had the number against the Quakes, and the Quakes this season, they're I mean they're okay this season on the road. They're actually a little better on the road compared to previous season because I've always say when the San Jose Earthquake go on the road, it's usually an automatic L for them. And one of the things that frustrates me about the Quakes this season is that they can play some pretty soccer, and I wouldn't be surprised if they once again play that pretty soccer against the Galaxy and take advantage of a Galaxy defense that is absolutely Swiss cheese this season. But what kind of frustrates me about the Quakes this season, and talk about Swiss cheese the defense. Both of these teams have Swiss cheese defense, so maybe this could be a high scoring, a fair kind of game. But at the same time, it's all about whether or not if this is going to be a Quakes team that will actually show their clinical finishing, or is it going to be a team that just absolutely make me pull my hair out seeing them missing chance after chance because this season this team should absolutely be better than where they are in the standings if they were just a little bit better in terms of their clinical finishing. They lead the league this season in XG, and they also are the most underperforming team when it comes to the XG this season, and it's not even close. Now, moving on, talk about my other team, the Loons, Minnesota United. So they are on the road as well. They face against the Vancouver Whitecaps. Now, again, the Whitecaps, I don't know why MLS decided not to let them have the midweek off. Consider you know that they have a huge clash on Sunday and could make history of becoming the second MLS team to win the CONCACAF Champions Cup. And we've seen before where teams involving in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, especially in the final, that is, usually MLS will give that team a week off to prepare. So why in the world did MLS decide not to let the Vancouver Whitecaps do that? I have no idea, and I'm pretty sure Whitecaps fans are pretty upset about that. And maybe Jasper Sorensen, even though he hasn't admitted, he's probably going to be very upset the fact that they're not getting the week prepare and have to play this game as well. I mean, this is a game that is a classic trap game for the Vancouver Whitecaps. Not just because Minnesota is a really good team this season, but the fact that, I mean, you are really looking forward to the biggest game in club history, and now you have to play it in this league game as well. And this is also kind of interesting to see how Jasper Sorensen is going to approach this as well. I mean, there's really two way I would say he can approach this. He could definitely put in most of his starters in this game and hope that that not only get a result in this one, but maybe use that as a momentum guider heading into the final. But at the same time, when you look at how many games that the Whitecaps has been playing this season, the most game that any team has played so far, if you look at all competition, do you want to maybe rest up some of your guys before it? Because yes, you want to have momentum, but you also don't want to have a situation where that game down in Mexico, that is in altitude. And I know that the Whitecaps have done well this season in Mexico and have defied all odds, but it just gets to a point where the fatigue is going to eventually catch up to this team. And with the way that this team also seems like they have a little bit more depth than what we thought they could. Maybe I think Jasper Sorensen might think about resting his guys in this one, and if that is the case, Minnesota has to take advantage of it. I mean, I mentioned before with the Loons, they are in the midst of a really tough schedule, kind of a murderous row in these next three games, where they have to play Seattle on the road in the weekend matchup. That probably is going to be a loss for them because they can't win against Seattle, and then they play at home against San Diego, and that's not going to be easy as well because San Diego has had an all-time worldie so far in the expansion season. They have to capitalize on this opportunity. I mean, a point usually would be good when you face against the Whitecaps, but if they don't play their starters, and especially Minnesota has been one of the best road team in these last couple of years. They have to take advantage of it. This has to be a win for the Loons. You gotta assume. But in terms of the head-to-head matchup, 6 wins apiece for both of these teams, and there's no doubt that Minnesota is also looking to try to avenge their loss against Vancouver in a game where I look back that game against Vancouver, they actually played pretty well against the Whitecaps until the starters come and also some mistakes that Eric Ramsey made when it comes to the substitution and also his formation change that completely wrecked the team. So yeah, that is going to be something that I'll be looking into, and that again, if Vancouver is going to start off a relatively weak side, Minnesota's got to take advantage of it. So it is easier said to be done because, like I said, only one team so far has figured out the Vancouver Whitecaps, and of all the team that figured out, it's the Chicago Fire that did it on the road as well. Now, moving on, we got the Portland Timbers versus the Colorado Rapids. So this game will also start at the same time as the Vancouver Minnesota game. But the Timbers 6-5-4, whereas the Rapids 6-4-5 is the record. Now, in terms of the all-time meetings, 16-7-11 in favor of the Portland Timbers. And this is a matchup that the Timbers have really dominated in recent memory. The Timbers love to play against the Colorado Rapids, especially at home. It's been kind of one-sided whenever the Timbers play the Rapids at home. So yeah, you expect maybe that could be the same case again. Though the Timbers have had their issue when it comes to goal scoring in lately, and the Rapids, they are winning games again, and they're and that Rocky Mountain Cup win that they had recently, it feels like it's revitalized this Chris Armas side, but they're still not playing exciting brand of soccer, and hasn't really looked like the Rapids team that can put fear to teams on the attack, just like what we've seen early in the season. And now you're facing against a Timber side that historically has well, I wouldn't say historically, but more recently have kind of have ownage against you. So yeah, that's going to be a really tough task for Chris Armas to prepare his team. Not to mention he would still won't forget the fact that in his first game in charge for the Rapids, it was against this Timber side on the road, and it was not a pretty performance. At least in the first 45 minutes, that was when they found themselves 4-0 Yeah. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for the preview of all of these midweek games. As always, let me know in the comments below. What do you think of these midweek games? And then, as always, I'll do part one and part two of the midweek games starting on Thursday, and then on Friday I'll finish up the review, and then have to once again do the weekend preview because anytime when there's free games in 7 days, it's really tough for me to try to get all these video put in place in quick succession. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure to see a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.